This video is over the notes for lesson 2 in unit 8. So we're going to look at this first little section here. It says find the third root of negative 216. To write third root, we just do a radical symbol with an index of 3 on the outside and negative 216 on the inside. Now with square roots, if we had a negative on the inside as part of the radicand, we had to introduce a new kind of number. That's when we had the i's that we had to pull out. Now with negatives inside of a odd root, we can do that. That's okay. So let's maybe make a note of that just says we can take odd roots of negatives, just so you know. Okay, so the cube root of negative 216, we just type that in our calculator. We do 3 math 5 to negative 216. The answer to that is negative 6. That means negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6 equals negative 216. So fourth root of 81. 4 math 5, 81 is 3. Okay, so rooting is the opposite of raising something to a power. So on this example, it says to solve, and we have x to the fifth equals 32. Now to undo that fifth power, we take the fifth root. And the fifth root of 32 is 2. We only use plus or minus with even roots. So if you remember, we used plus or minus when we were doing square roots. We only do that if we're using odd or even roots. Sorry. Okay, so this looks a little bit different. When you have something raised to a fractional or a rational exponent, to undo that, we're going to raise each side to the reciprocal power. Because remember, when you have a power to power like this, you multiply these powers. 2/3 times 3/2 is 1. Anytime you multiply reciprocals, you're going to get 1. That is just x equals 125. Now this bottom number being 2 means that we're taking a square root. When that bottom number is even, we have to put that plus or minus in there. Okay, so let's get it a little bit tougher, add some steps in here. When you were solving equations, you were doing PEMDAS backwards. It means you undo addition, subtraction, then multiplication, division, then exponents, then parentheses. So we have multiplication, we're going to undo that first. We're going to undo that exponent. We undo a cubed by cube rooting. Now, cube root of 96 is a decimal if you type that in your calculator. So we have to look at the perfect cubes that go into 96. Well, 8 goes into 96, and it's 8 times 12. Cube root of 8 is 2. There's no perfect cube that goes into 12, so our final answer would be 2 cube root of 12. And x is by itself, so we're done. Okay. Here, once again, PEMDAS backwards. We do addition, subtraction first. So we have subtraction, we're going to undo that minus 10 by adding 10 to both sides. Sorry, I wrote that weird. So x to the 6th equals equals 1,458. Undo the 6th power by 6th rooting. If we type that in our calculator, we get a decimal, so we have to find the perfect 6 that goes into 1458, which is 729 times 2. The 6th root of 729 is 3. 6th root of 2 gets stuck in, just like when we were using square roots. We also took an even root, so you have to put a plus or minus in front. That'd be our answer. Okay. All right, so what happens when there's parentheses? Well, let's look at PEMDAS backwards again. If there's anything outside those parentheses, we would undo it first. But since it's just parentheses, the exponent actually comes first. So we're going to undo this exponent of 5 before we undo the stuff inside the parentheses. So we fifth root, x minus 1 equals 4. Now we have to solve for x, so we're going to add 1 both sides. Our final answer would be 5. And on this one, we're going to cube root both sides. So we have x minus 2 equals cube root of negative 14. Well, we can take the cube root of a negative number, but 14 is not a perfect cube. Therefore, we get a decimal. And it also is not divisible by any perfect cubes, which means that this cannot be reduced. So we're just going to leave it like this. So when we add 2 to the other side, we're going to keep it separate like this. That's one way you can write the answer, and I'd be okay with you leaving it like that. Okay, so on your note sheet on page 6, we actually crossed off these steps, and I said that the thing that you really needed to know is that you needed to raise to reciprocal power to cancel exponent. We're still doing PEMDAS backwards. So we have multiplication, we have an exponent. That multiplication is going to get undone first. X to the 3/2 equals 125. So we are going to raise both sides to the reciprocal power of 2/3. You can type in your calculator 125 caret 2 divided by 3, and the answer is 25. No plus or minus because we took an odd root. Here we would divide by negative 2. And raise to the 4/3 power, which equals 16. So we just get that x by itself and then raise it to the reciprocal power. So this one has parentheses, which means we're going to undo the exponent first before we undo the parentheses. So we're going to raise both sides to the reciprocal 2/5 power. We have x plus 3 equals 4. And we got to solve for x, so we subtract 3, so x equals 1. So solving is pretty similar to what you've always done. The biggest difference now is you have to remember that if you are undoing an exponent, we undo it by rooting. And then if you are undoing a fractional exponent, you raise each side to the reciprocal power.